Hello there. I've been a big fan of Skallagrim for a while, and he recently posted a couple of videos regarding sickle weapons. I sat up and took notice because even though I'm not knowledgeable about the use of European sickles in combat, I have had training using the Japanese equivalent, the kama. While I'm by no means an expert on the Japanese weapon arts, I do have a fairly broad range of experience. I have a Shodan rank in Iaido and Kodachi, an EQ rank in Naginata, and over the years I've had training in the bow, jo, kaibo, and the kama, among others. I've also studied European saber fencing, but I didn't get very far before I had to stop. In Skallagrim's first video, he said he was trying to figure out the techniques found in a manuscript from Mayer. Trying to learn techniques from a book without a foundation in the weapon's use is hard. I'd say he did as well as anyone could expect in a short time frame. As shown in another video of his, where he looks at the similarities between Japanese and European sword techniques, I thought maybe I could help shed some light on how the Japanese used them, which in turn could translate into a better understanding of how the European sickle might have been used. I'm also not talking about the flashy acrobatic performances or other elaborate techniques that comprise most of what you'll find on the internet with regards to kama use. The kind of training I received was not for competitive demonstration, and the kata I learned involved very practical techniques. Maybe my training was unusual in that regard, I don't know. It is rare to find a dojo to teach them in the first place, and as far as I know, nearly unheard of to do any real sparring with them. I don't see a lot of functional difference between the two types of sickles. I have to imagine the techniques developed in Japan would follow similar lines in Europe. Since Skallagrim's first video was mainly looking at Mayer's techniques in a sickle versus sickle fight, I don't think doing any comparison there would be worthwhile. Sickle versus sickle of either style will probably be messy and ultimately will come down to whoever the better fighter is anyway. Besides, I don't know anyone else with kama training, so I couldn't demonstrate that aspect even if I wanted to. I will instead be focusing on Skallagrim's second sickle video, where he tries the sickle versus sword. I question the conclusions he came to, and I think he came to them largely based on the manner he was using them. I want to see if my training shows sickle weapons in a different light. This is the first time I've sparred with or even picked up and used the kama in probably 30 years. I am out of shape, definitely not in top form, so I'm afraid I'm not going to have the greatest technique on display. To make this video more relevant though, I co-opted help from a friend and coworker who studies and practices European weapon combat. I'm going to be meeting up with him at the place where he practices. Though I sparred with him once a couple of years ago, I still don't know a lot about European HEMA sword use, so I'm expecting I'm going to have a lot of trouble predicting and reacting to the attacks he's going to be throwing at me. I'm just going to have to rely on my training and adapt. This is also my first time making a video like this, and I'm not really trying to become a content creator. It's just the best format to present this sort of thing. Without further ado, here we go. I'm at the Combat Warlord Academy in Irving, Texas. I'm here with my friend Sean, who is a practitioner here. Why don't you tell us a little about that?
We started up three years ago, I think, at this facility. But I've been with the team and the group for about 5 years. We do lightsaber combat, sambo, HEMA, and armored combat sports here. Also does bower, battle nation, kind of stuff.
What are you trying to do?
I predominantly fight and boher with long axes, but I fought for many years in HEMA with a Longsword, and I spent some time with some one-handed weapons, not anything like formal training-wise, but I've used sabers and arming swords, messers, shields. I've used most of everything, but I wouldn't say I'm trained in everything.
All right. Well, we're gonna try the kama against your techniques. Your styles are not a style that I know, so
yeah, this is totally foreign to me. Yeah.
So I guess you might kick, but I guess we'll see what
It's all about
happens.
experiment, right?
Yeah. So let's try it out.
Right. The big deal is like not stepping through with this much. Full extension with this punch.
He comes at me with a strike, and I parry it. I advance forward, try to catch his sword with my kama, but it miss. He strikes, but I also parry that one to my head. I try to strike again at his arm, and then he sneaks in a strike at my head that just gets in just over my defense.
A lot more control than I realized.
So, if I'm fighting you, so for this drill, we're going to use the chest, and we're not going to take super explosive. So we're looking to...
Alright, so I see him coming in ready to attack. I come up to parry, but he flips it around and tries to strike at my arm, but misses. I then parry his second strike, and I advance forward, trying to close the distance, but at this point I realize I'm putting myself at a disadvantage. So I step back and wait to see what he does. I see him coming in to strike. I set up my defense. I parry his first strike. I parry his second strike. I see him coming around, and I decide to go ahead and advance. I parry him again, and now I've got my opportunity, so I catch his sword on the end of my kama, and then I move in and have the opportunity to strike his back while he's trying to grapple my other arm.
So we're looking to...
I was trying to go for a grapple, and that stay came right around on me.
Right? Yeah. So this is the sort of position I'm looking for the person without...
Alright, so I think I'm going to try and catch his sword and bind it, but I miss, and he sweeps it in and just whacks me.
That's force level. Yeah.
Drop down and full push off at that.
Alright, so he's going to do a thrust. I think this is a probing strike. I batted away. He missed anyway. Then I decide to press my attack and catch his weapon on my left kama, which forces him to draw back. I advance forward and strike with my right, and I think I hit his hand, but I'm not sure there. I defend myself from his blade just in case, and then I'm so close that I'm just hitting him in the chest with the kama at that point.
Oh no.
This is going to be a very full extension punch. I want to
Here's a case where I think I was too aggressive. I step forward and bind his sword, and then press my attack going forward, trying to catch his sword again, but I miss. And then he backs away, flips his sword around, and whacks me just above my belt line.
Sorry. It was about behind you. I wasn't expecting you to go that far behind me.
So that I have a better push off back. Boom. Try this a few times, see if you're comfortable with this. It's a sort of a weird movement, but it's super effective.
Sean comes in with a powerful thrust. I deflect it away. I advance forward, catch his sword with the left. He gets it free. I try to catch it again, miss. I parry his next strike, and then I still have it caught, so I sweep it around behind him and trap it behind his back, and then proceed to cut his mid-side while he tries to grapple with the other blade, which probably would have lost him some figures as well.
I couldn't tell what it was.
Because I had to draw my hands anyway, so it's like a good way to do it. Boom. So like if you want to get those hands out of the way, it's very easy to start with this fake wood.
Sean faked me out, pure and simple. Thought he was going high, he went low and slow.
This fake low. You get this like flint
You see in your blade, it's reflecting all this black. You're getting good control on it. You may not see it, but you're controlling it. So, yeah. Let's switch sides.
My goal is
See if this makes any difference. I'll have a little bit more room to run from you now. Actually, just bring it this way so we have equal. I forget how tired sparring is for me nowadays. Well, you're getting excited? Because you haven't done it in a while? Yeah, I'm not breathing properly. That's good. At least you're remembering what's coming back, right? Yeah. The effects are pretty active. Less what I know. Yeah, yeah. And so I'm not as quick on the defenses because I don't know where I come from. Right. Makes sense. Yeah, I'm trying to feel you out at a distance engage, but you're able to control my blade a little bit better than I realized, and then I get bound up before I can get away. All right. Yes.
Sean comes in with an underhanded strike to try and catch my wrist, but he misses. I advance forward, and then he lunges, but he comes up oh so short, driving me back a bit. He tries to strike again, but I parry it. I advance forward, and then he comes up, and I think he's going to strike high, but this European style tripped me up, and he whipped the sword much lower than I was expecting, and he hits me on the side.
I will say one thing interesting so far. Not hit my hand once. No, not at all. You should be getting this box really easily. Like you're just scooping them out. And it's like, I'm throwing a lot of them in there, just trying to see if they'll give me something, or expose something. So I'm not dedicating very much on those, but you're not dedicating anything on those either. So it's like a game of who's going to do what. Right.
So he comes in, and I block it actually with the left comma there. And then he backs up and resets. I come in and see that he's striking high, and so I set up my defense, but he does a technique where he kind of flips it over and hits my head with the backside of the blade.
It's one of those unorthodox shots you probably wouldn't be used to, because you don't have a back edge katana. Yeah. I came up high, so like your hands were in the perfect position to block this, and I just went right over the top. It's all these things I forget to use. Suddenly they're really important. Because like you're making contact, and I'm like, what's happening?
So Sean comes in with a couple of sweeping strikes that are really just to kind of close the distance and distract me, I think, before he really commits and does a thrust to my head, which I deflect. He comes back around, and I deflect this one off the side of my comma. And then we reset. Since I don't think he knows what I was going to do, but I'm being a bit more cautious now. So then he goes in for another thrust. He misses, and I think I kind of hit it anyway. Then he pulls back. He's being pretty cautious in this fight as well. Not giving me a whole lot of commitment to work with. He's now going to try and sweep low, but I see it in time and move my leg out of the way. And I start to advance forward to push him, but he backs away, and I realize I'm getting into another one of those chase situations that he keeps taking advantage of. So he comes back in, again trying to go with the underhand cut to try and cut a wrist, but I'm too far back for that to be effective. Again, he's trying to close the distance a bit. He thrusts, but I parry it right at the last instant. I let him back away. He tries to see if he can knock my comma or, I don't know, disrupt me. He gets the tip of it, but it doesn't bother me. Does a similar thing again. Just a kind of a probing thing to close the distance. He does come up, and I was able to catch it with catch his blade, and that sets off a series of events where I'm trying to basically bind his blade, and I keep catching it and disrupting him, and it allows me to get close enough. So this is the only time during the fights that his sword even touched my hand. But if you notice, the blade is actually resting on top of the flat of the blade is resting on top of my hand, and it was only there briefly, so I don't believe this would have actually cut me or injured me in any significant way. It quickly disengages as I sweep it away as well. Sean pulls back, trying to free his blade, but I get close, and I try to strike at him. He grabs my right hand and is concerned about it. Meanwhile, I'm trying to catch him with my left hand, but then finally he releases, and I hook under his right arm and catch his wrist and snag him. So Sean comes in, he tries to slash at my hand, but he goes under and actually hits my left comma there. And he sweeps it around, but he's out of range for that sweep. Resets. I deflect his weak thrust. I'm ready to deflect another thrust, but it was just a feint. I'm ready to parry, but it's a feint to do this flip, but he's out of range. He's looking for an opening, I'm pretty sure. He feints again, but I react enough time to block his attack. He swings again, I block that one and bind his blade a little bit. He frees it, I block his third strike. I block his fourth strike. And then he comes in low and hits my belly.
This is what an overlook. We can do the same thing in an underlook. We can start looking. I'm gonna look.
I go on the offensive. I hit his blade a little bit there. He's backing up. He tries to do a thrust, but I sweep it away. He tries to... he looks like he's coming up, but he doesn't. He's waiting for that opening. He does a strike, but I catch it on Nakama. He strikes again. I deflect that. I'm still getting chased. My biggest problem is that he is so fast, and I'm so slow. And I just can't chase him very easily. Then he does this sort of half-hearted backhand swing, and I think it catches me on my gauntlet, on my wrist, there, as he's running away.
Chasing you around.
I guess not right into the wall.
We look for it. If you're going to start moving, you have the choice of whether or not you want to drop it fast lock or you can start popping up arms. It's a big thing. I'll work on it.
It's flip.
Take this side.
Back thumb guard.
Okay.
Keep your hips off the ground or off the rail so you don't have to go down. And then try to control the jump.
It looks a little light. Yeah, there's nothing. No. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the problem with these huge guards.
No, I mean, I can tell when it's a pretty good shot. That was nothing. I glanced off your palm.
What? 20 seconds. 5 seconds, 4 seconds.
Sean comes in with a quick slash, but I think he misses or I deflect it. Then he comes in again, and I parry this one, sweep it away. I found it a lot harder to bind the saber than the longsword. He's just swinging his sword around, so I thought I'd come in and try to catch him, which I do there, but it deflects away and he recovers. Then he swings in. I try to parry it, but I missed, and he whacks me on the head.
I think you might have got a little on the arm there on that last shot before the head.
He was back and like,
Ah,
I was always trying to come back up. But yeah, trying to chase you down.
This problem. Rotate out and go right
well, I
back.
think you're just agreeing to play my game.
Right. I think you're right. That's my mistake.
Yeah, I think that's really all that's happening there. Is you're just agreeing to chase me too much.
Right.
Sean takes a slash at my weapon, which just glances off of it lightly. And then he repositions. He decides to rotate around me, probably to try and catch me off my guard by doing so. I'm not exactly sure. He's coming in low, but I avoid it. He's still playing very defensively. I come in to close the distance. He strikes low, but I keep out of his reach. And then I press the attack. Now blocking his blade, and then catching him here on his wrist. And so I've got him by the wrist at this point on one without.
Good job getting rid of that door.
You also get very fast, didn't you?
That was perfect, dude. That's perfect. You played the right game there, man. Fake pull axe.
Big pull-ups.
So we've switched to a representation of the poleaxe, which is his specialty weapon, or at least a representation of one. I'm not sure this proxy is a perfect representation, as his acceleration is a lot faster, as he demonstrated me to the poleaxe later on. But he comes in and he attacks, and I parry it. He comes in again, and I parry that blow. Now I try to advance in, but he's really ducking away fast. I try to come in and catch him before he gets his swing, but that's where the acceleration really comes in. I might have been able to catch the weapon before it went too far, had he been slower with it.
That's of course all. Is that okay?
Huh? Oh, that's fine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Just making sure I'm calibrated.
no, I've had far harder than it's intended.
Yeah, yeah.
So focus on trying to just avoid it. Yup.
Now, you feel like that is faster than if you were wielding the poleaxe.
My reload shots are. So my ability to attack you repeatedly is. So I can slow down my fire rate and try to represent that a little bit more accurately.
So I'm just wondering about the
Because
comparison.
the attack coming in is pretty accurate, maybe a little bit faster, but the force that would generate would be much faster. Like afterwards, like I can tell with an axe, and I'll demonstrate that. I'll have a spearhead on my axe too, so I'm not gonna stab it.
But by being calm and trusting my defense, you can find my text. Rather than acting like
I should have advanced there.
to map which means he said it.
Again, just not familiar with the technique.
Sean whacks at my comma. I let it get knocked away. Comes into attack, and I parry it, or at least I would have if he had followed through on it. I think he had a technique already in mind, and he was going to draw me in and then hit me with the butt end. So he tries to strike hard, and he misses. He's a little bit out of range. I think he might have been aiming for my hand. I'm trying not to be so aggressive and be a little bit more defensive this time. We're doing a lot of predicting and reacting without anything actually happening through here. Pretty sure he wants me to go after the butt end, and then he'll bring the axe end around and whack me. But he decides to come in and whack, but I parry it. Comes in again, does a big strike down, but I parry that as well. Block his strike. I'm ready to catch a follow-up strike, but he never does it. And so I realize I'm chasing him again and back away. A lot of positioning happening in this fight. Sean is experimenting with different stances and holding the weapons in different ways to try and change up his attacks. Maybe catch me in a way that I have a hard time defending against. He's trying to do an uppercut, but misses. I think I might have finally worn out his patience. So he's committing more heavily. I parry his strike. I decide to go ahead and advance while he's recovering. He tries to attack again, but I'm ready for it. I parry that one. And now I'm getting close. This is where the speed of his weapon slows down. And I'm able to catch him and then eviscerate him. I noticed one of the comma was cracked pretty severely, and these wooden ones are not made for this sort of abuse. I was talking about how much power that you could actually defend yourself with. And I had Sean pick up a staff and, hit me really hard to try and demonstrate it. But unfortunately, the comma did not survive the final power hit.
Quite a fight.
Yes, it was really, really good. As we were saying before off camera, a lot of the things that he was doing, I think, working was when he was letting himself fight naturally and just reacting to what I was doing and just doing something based off of that. And where I was having a lot of success was when he was trying to chase down these rabbit holes of, I know how to counter this, I'm going to do it, but I wasn't giving him probably the input you're used to from your sport.
Right.
And
Exactly.
then you're just like, why isn't this working? And you just keep chasing it, and I'm like, okay, well.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly was trying to try some of the techniques that I know in this context, and you weren't making the kinds of attacks that enabled it to happen. So, and I was too aggressive on trying to chase you to close that distance. And, I guess I was just expecting you to be more aggressive and more coming forward to me rather than backing away from me whenever you would strike and then immediately back away, and I was expecting you to strike and follow through and come in. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up just chasing you stupidly.
So a lot of that was, I haven't faced you in a long, long time. And the last time that we played, you were using the Shinai, right? Or was it the actual katana?
No, well, it was. I think I was using one of your longswords, but I was using it in the Japanese.
In that style, yeah. So it was like fighting a totally different person. And whenever I'm fighting someone I haven't faced before, I don't know what you're going to do. And so my instinct is to just throw what I call 90%ers. 90% of the time, I'm going to live. Either you're going to block it or you're not. If you don't, cool, I get a hit. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep throwing these because it's a way to harass you, suppress your guard, and get you to start showing me things. Show me where I can get a hit in. And you had a really good defense, so it's really hard to figure out what that is, especially compiled on top of your style being so different. If I'm fighting someone with a longsword or a style that I know, I can just charge right in there to a degree. But with you, it's like throwing a shot and don't know what I'm seeing. Throwing a shot and don't know what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And
That's how I felt, trying to use these against your technique was, I wasn't sure where your attack was going to come from. I did have a hard time seeing your sword in this environment because it's a very dark environment. And your sword was reflecting dark, and so it's like, with my eyesight, it was going invisible to me.
Right,
most of the
right.
time. So that was really hard.
well, I mean, it's interesting you say that because like you're I would never have believed it by your fighting because you had such good control over that longsword in those fights. Like there's so many times that I was anticipating doing fair house, depending on who you talk to, but it's the idea of just cutting across down like that. I was thinking I was going to get a lot more of those on you when you came in at me, and then I found really quickly that you had me caught in ways where I couldn't quite get out of them how I wanted to, and that was really, really interesting. And so you not being able to see the blade and being able to get that level of control was really, really good.
Now I did find that while there were a few times where you hit my hands, most of the time you did not.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I got
Or it was
Incidental.
like an incidental hit against the huge gauntlet that I was wearing,
Yeah.
as opposed to what I felt would be a painful hit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so in that regard, the technique that I was using was protecting my hand from that while controlling.
Yeah, I mean I mean it's a lot that would the kinds of stuff you were using isn't anything different than what I would use to protect my hand here. I mean, granted, these would generally have a little bit of a longer cross guard, but it's a lot of just out to the side, boof, boof, boof. And I think you're using a little bit higher up, so you may have a little bit more of an outward cant.
No, it's actually a more inward.
Inward? Okay,
So
yeah.
that basically when
So
the
you kinda
cut
guide
comes
it up.
in, it slides in to the
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that
and
makes sense.
that helps protect the hands.
Okay,
That's why all the blocks, tend to be like this.
I gotcha.
Or like this, or like this.
Because you're trying to guide them into that
Because you're
channel.
trying to guide it, which is different than a lot of weapons where your block is going to be out here.
Right, because you want to drift it out.
You want to drift it out or out here.
Yeah.
And you have a cross guard to protect you to slide it into the cross guard.
That's interesting because it looked the same to me as just like a standard rapier, cutlass, whatever, saber block.
But it really is a different technique.
Makes sense,
that's
yeah.
involved with that.
Yeah,
And
'cause-
I think that's the important thing about sickle weapons is that technique, because if you try and do it the other way, the blade's going into your hand,
Yeah.
and that's not a good thing.
I mean, I think that we got to see a little bit of some advantages and disadvantages of the different weapon styles in a slightly fluid environment. We started off kind of pushing that corner over there, and when we were playing a lot to the strengths of this, which is kind of what it's designed for, right? Like it's a farming tool.
Yeah,
You're
it's
gonna be
basically a farm.
probably going to be in a field, I guess, but maybe in a lot of crop around you, so you may not have the ability to move around quite so much. So.
I mean, I don't know how often the European sickles were used, in actual combat. I can't imagine it would be very often.
I think there's
Peasant uprisings is where I would say they might be used.
the closest thing I can think of would be there's some documentation in the 16th century of using a scythe. And it was, from my understanding, it was a manual of arms to take you to your lord to train your peasants. So they said whenever you got attacked, your levy would immediately go to fight.
Skallagrim showed a manuscript by Mayer.
Right, yeah.
And is that the document you're? He was documenting the martial arts of the medieval.
Yeah, it would have been Mayer or Meyer. They're both two different guys, but they both did documents on medieval martial arts. Yeah.
But I'm curious about the context of that and how often they would use such that the martial arts would develop.
I don't think there would be one at all, if any. Because if we look at things like flails and scythes and all these cool fantasy weapons that you see a lot, they're not really used historically as battle weapons. The flail was used a lot as like a historical item. Like you would see a lot of artwork. It was like the bad guys in stories, he carried a flail with 3 heads. It was cool stuff like that. But in terms of combat, it would be like a threshing ball, which would be like a stick like this, with a single ring on the top, with another single ring looped into that with a big head that would just hang down and it would have knobs on it. And that's for breaking up your wheat or your cane or whatever. But if you're using a shield and I strike into it with this
it's going right over the
flips
top of
forward.
that shield.
Yeah, exactly. So that was used. So there's some, I can't remember the name of them right now, but they're the dudes who used something called a goat knack, which was just basically a stick with a weight and a pointy bit on the end of it. They used that along with all kinds of peasant farm type equipment because they didn't have, it was basically a peasant uprising more or less, but
Now in Japan,
Hussite, Jan Hus and the Hussites, the Hussite wars. Those guys were using all kinds of like mauls and stuff like that, but it wasn't like three-headed flails and fantasy weapons. It was farmers' weapons, and that was the most you would see stuff like that.
now in Japan, I believe that the peasants basically weren't allowed weapons. And
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
So if you wanted to rise up, you only had farmers' weapons.
Because that was right after Sengoku Jidai, right? That's when they took away everyone's weapons except for the warrior class, right?
Right.
I know very little about
Yeah, I
that history.
think that's right. I'm not an expert on the
Yeah.
history, but so basically a lot of their styles and their techniques, who they were facing was samurai.
So
Japanese
noble on
swords.
noble.
So it would be peasant.
Okay.
Japanese. So you develop techniques to defend against the samurai weapons.
Okay.
And so that's where a lot of these techniques come from, is that, they would be facing the yari, the spear,
Right.
or a naginata, or the sword.
So
And it would
they
be
used-
from a samurai, from their samurai training.
Yeah.
So you had this style developed
Yeah.
to whenever you got into a fight with one. And so I can understand where that style comes from. That's why I'm curious about the manuscript and the techniques that he was showing. I'm like, how did those develop? And
I think
why
they
did
would have.
this develop?
My impression would be that they were sold as a manual of arms to a noble lord to train peasants to fight other peasants, because you didn't really have standing armies up until 16th, 17th century.
So he said, hey, you peasants, go fight these guys and grab
And
whatever you
so
have.
it was like this constant, shit rolls downhill. You, the king, go, all right, we're going to war, boys. And then I'm like, all right, we're going to war, boys. And it just goes all the way down until you get to your knight, who owns a parcel of land with 50 peasants on it. He grabs his 50 peasants who know how to use science from this book, and then he brings them to bolster your army. And it's kind of a little bit like the Ashigaru, but I think it's probably the best representation is around the Ashigaru, before you had those standing armies with professional soldiers, because these guys were equipping themselves. The only thing provided for them probably is lodging, food, and water, maybe something like that. But they had to arm themselves in a sense. They would have been equipped with cheap spears and knives and cloth armor. Very similar to what those peasants would have been armed with.
Yeah, but definitely the sickle weapons. I can say for certain that sword, an actual military weapon is better than a sickle weapons. That's not to say that they can't be effective.
No, I think that there's absolutely, the thing that I've learned in fighting in Bohurt that I think that gets lost in a lot of HEMA is that any weapon can be good if you just counter all the weaknesses of it, right? Like that may be a mountain to climb, but it's a mountain that can be climbed.
It's also the skill of the combatant.
Yeah, everything's a factor. Everything, absolutely.
I mean, in fact, I'd say probably 60 or 70% of it is the skill of the person that's wielding the weapon.
Yes, that's
rather than the weapon itself.
Right. That's exactly what I mean. It's like fighting with an axe in close quarters combat is not the best, but if you learn how to grapple really well, you can just throw people on the ground and beat the hell out of them. It's not a problem. It's the same thing with those. Like you can beat anyone if you train hard enough, get good enough, learn all this stuff, etc., etc. Just enter all the cheat codes and you're good to go, right? I think that it was really surprising how effective it was. I'm not surprised that it was very effective. It was more effective against the longsword than other stuff. Longsword's cool, it's everyone's favorite, but like everyone forgets it's a pistol. It's not the assault rifle. Your axe is your primary, that's your backup. And it has that great length because if I've got full plate armor, I don't need a shield. I can take advantage of this big weapon, big size, all that. I felt a lot more comfortable using the saber for sure, because I was able to just keep harassing you. And my main thing with one-handed weapons is I want to suppress your guard to open up deeper targets that will kill. That's so you're like you were saying, you're seeing a lot of these light shots in the hands. I want your hands in so I can hit you in the head, because I don't have to hit you very hard in the face and the eyes and all that. So you go, okay.
I did feel like I had a little bit easier time fighting against the longsword because the saber was so fast.
Yeah.
And I was having problems, partly because I had this heavy gauntlets on, I had this heavy jacket on.
It's a
I
little bit
really
to get
felt
used
it
to.
slowing me down.
Yeah. If you're not used
not
to
to
it.
mention I haven't picked this up in 30 years.
Yes.
So I'm not saying this one.
I think what you may have been noticing more than the weight in these is the restriction.
Yeah.
They can be, especially this one didn't fit you at all.
Yeah,
So you were
really
like,
tight. I was like in a compression thing.
you had limited movement, and I have a little bit limited movement in mine, but like I've been fighting it for years, so I'm used to that.
I might have done better, if I had proper equipment.
Absolutely, it would have been a contributing factor.
Lighter gear.
Yes, it would have absolutely.
I don't know if I would have done that much better.
Yeah, I don't know how much of a difference it'd make, but it would absolutely make things. It made life a lot easier for you, for sure.
And it was part, if we did this more
Yeah.
often, and I got used to the style.
Absolutely.
I'd be able to predict and catch your weapon.
And that was happening as we fought, more and more rounds. Like I was starting to figure out ways around your guard. You were finding more ways around my guard. So you feel that feeling you out kind of stuff. I was noticing that coming direct center was really difficult. Like coming on the outside, like I was saying before, I forget the name of the cut, but it's kind of German. It's coming over with this false edge. That one, and then some of these coming up off the sides and coming up under. Were throwing you off and creating openings. I wasn't able to capitalize them enough, but I think they're just more unorthodox movements that you're not used to because you don't have that back edge. So when I started swinging that around, you were really like, what do I do here?
Yeah.
Hey, Evan, how's it going?
All right, well, I think we can wrap this up, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Great.
really appreciate your help.
Absolutely. It's been
It was a class.
absolute pleasure. Absolutely, yes.
Thanks.
Well, despite the mistakes I made, I ended up doing a lot better than I was expecting. Sean is a cunning fighter, and he's really fast. Way faster than me, and I was pretty exhausted in most of those bouts. The jacket didn't help my ability to breathe either because it was so small on me. That was the entirety of our fights, too. I only cut out periods where I was catching my breath. When I started making this video, I was going to talk more about technique and the reasons why I thought Skallagrim had difficulty against the sword. It was when I was demonstrating the techniques with my son and putting the video together that I knew it wasn't going to be a convincing argument. The problem with practice against willing opponents or kata or things like that is that it isn't a real-world fight. It's like when Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Practice in kata isn't supposed to accurately represent a real fight. It's about gaining muscle memory, being able to react without thinking about it, and knowing how to take advantage of opportunities as they present themselves. I needed Sean's help to show the difference the right technique can make in a real fight, and also to prove to myself that my argument had merit. I just hoped I could still use the comma well enough to do it. All in all, I ended up with about a 40% win rate, and most of the bouts I lost could have easily gone the other way. Skallagrim suggested at the end of the sickle versus sword video that to make sickles effective, the user would need to be faster than their sword-wielding opponent, and that something like a parrying dagger would be more effective defensively, as well as overcoming the sickle's weaknesses, particularly the vulnerability of the hand. Was Skallagrim wrong? I'd like to see what he thinks if he sees this video, and I'll leave it up to you to decide if my argument and demonstration was strong enough. I'm also wondering if anyone felt my demonstration may have shed any light on how sickles may have been used in Europe. This video ended up being a lot longer than I anticipated, and I apologize. Hopefully it wasn't too boring with the slow-mo commentary and the post-sparring discussion. Felt like if this was going to be a good demonstration, I needed to slow it down and explain what was going on, as motion blur made a lot of it hard to read. I also wanted to show Sean's reactions and thoughts about fighting against the comma in the post-sparring discussion. I make no claims to the accuracy of anything historically discussed. Neither of us are experts in history, so some of that may very well be misinformed. I have a couple of replacement sparring comma on order from Purple Heart Armory, and might do a follow-up video in a few weeks to show some of the things I didn't get to try before the wooden ones broke. I might also use it as an opportunity to answer any questions that come up. We'll see. This took a lot more effort to put together than I was anticipating, particularly the subtitling after I discovered how bad the audio was. And I might have gone a little overboard on trying to make the presentation look professional. Special thanks to Sean for helping me out and being a great sparring partner, my daughter who did all the great filming, and my untrained son who valiantly agreed to be my sparring partner before I changed what this video is going to be. I'll end the video with a clip of that, and see if you can spot the techniques I used in my bouts with Sean. Also, thanks and respect to Skallagrim for continuing to make really awesome videos and being one of my favorite creators. Keep up the great work. Thanks for watching.
Try harder, Spencer.
I just didn't do that well. I'm still rusty. But let's move back a little bit. All right, that's good.